Hey, Windy, do you ever see one of those tweets? They're verified accounts now, but they're the ones where the profile picture is like an existing member of the Spurs squads, and it's like Sell, Højbjerg, Hill, Royale, 100 million, buy, Osimhen, Elise. Why doesn't Daniel Levy do this? Right? You ever see one of those tweets?
It should be so easy.
Yeah. So we're gonna do that, right? Okay. But like, we're gonna pretend that we're serious adults and we have the right to do it properly. So you sent me this on the screen right now, the official UEFA documents, regulations, Article 31 player lists. Whatever. I'm not reading that. You also sent me the Premier League's definition of what a homegrown player is.
Yep.
Yeah, but you've done the hard work for me there, I reckon, because you have made a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I have made a spreadsheet.
And your spreadsheet says that you reckon it's a bit different between the Premier League and UEFA, but basically we can bring in... Wow, can we really only bring in one non-homegrown player according to UEFA at the moment?
If we want to list all of those non-homegrown players in our UEFA squad, then yes, we can only squeeze in one more non-homegrown player.
And 2 club trained.
Yeah.
And we can't even bring a homegrown non-club trained one, is that right?
We can't, that is correct. Should I start by giving you a little rundown of the rules?
Yeah, talk me through it.
Okay, Nathan. How many homegrown players do we need to name in our Premier League squad?
We don't need to name any.
Correct.
Okay.
You didn't fall into my trap. We do not need to name any homegrown players. That is the biggest misconception of the homegrown players rule. So the homegrown players rule came in years and years ago now to try and encourage clubs to bring through their young players to benefit the national team. A good idea, I think, in theory. Where we are now, and I'm going to be staring at the camera and not at the camera, depending on which screen I'm looking at. So apologies for the motion sickness.
I always do that.
Focusing on me. The basic point is that we can name a maximum of 17 non-homegrown players in our Premier League squad, right? So if you look at Nathan's spreadsheet, I've created a slot of 17 non-homegrown players.
For the Premier League?
For the Premier League.
But there's only 15 spaces on the UEFA one.
I will come on to that. It's because on the UEFA one, I've included 6 List A Association trained players in column J.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll come on to that in a minute.
Okay.
So we can name fewer than 8 homegrown players if we want to, and that's fine. It's within our gift to do that. But obviously, we would have to name a smaller squad than the maximum out of 25.
Gotcha.
So if you name 7 homegrown players, you can only have a 24-man squad. 6 homegrown players, you can only have a 23-man squad, and so on.
So the way to think of it is 2 separate lists or 3 separate lists where you've got 17 non-homegrowns and what did you say?
8 homegrowns. Or more, or you can have fewer than 17 non-homegrowns, obviously, and many more homegrowns. You can have 25 homegrown players if you want. And then we get onto exactly.
The Dychian era Burnley methods.
Yeah, not anymore. Then we come to the under-21 players. In the Premier League, they are all freebies.
Yay!
So, play the youth, I've been saying for many years. The benefit of bringing through young players is many-fold, but particularly beneficial for the Premier League squad list, because it means you can supplement your squad with players that are under 21, therefore freebies, and ready to go. And they're probably going to become homegrown players in the future. So a homegrown player is one who has been affiliated or registered to a club affiliated with the Football Association or the Football Association of Wales for 3 seasons before the 21. 3 seasons before the 21.
And this is the Premier League's definition?
This is the Premier League's definition. Okay. Or 36 months. before their 21st birthday or the end of the season during which they turn 21. It's slightly complicated. What you need to know, though, 3 seasons before 21, homegrown player. Yeah, so under 21 players, if they then stay at the club for 3 seasons before 21, irrespective of their nationality, Luka Vuskovic, they become Premier League homegrown players. Hence, it is really tempting for clubs to go and sign talented 18-year-old European players because they become future Premier League homegrown players. So that's the Premier League. I've kind of spoken about the benefit of having young players. They're freebies. You don't have to worry about the non-homegrown player status. The UEFA competitions are more complicated.
Okay.
Because you have List A and List B. Right. So UEFA don't just want you to have players that are trained in the FA structure. They want you to bring through your own players. They want to encourage clubs to develop players in-house. There's a slight... So List A, this is so complicated to explain. I hope it makes some sense. List A is split into club trained, association trained, and then neither. And when we talk about List A, we're mostly talking about over 21 players, mostly. And I say mostly because you'll notice that Lucas Bergvall, Pat Matasar, Udogi have all been in the non-homegrown List A because you have to have been at the club for 2 years. Lucas Bergvall obviously hasn't been in the club for 2 years, so he has to be listed. Club-trained players are exactly as they sound. They've come through at the club. So Brandon Austin, Oliver Skipp, Alfie Whiteman, if you want to include him, have all come through at Spurs. So would be in the club-trained. We can have 4 club-trained. We can have as many club-trained as you like, but if you want to have the full squad, you have to have 4. Then we have the association-trained players. They're the ones that came through at another club in the same football association, or Football Association of Wales nowadays as well. So Davis is included. He wasn't previously, but he is now because of a rule change. So Maddison, Forster, Davis, Spence, Johnson, and Archie Gray all came through at other clubs in the FA or FAW. And then List B is your under 21s that have been at the club for 2 years or more. So I think I'm right in saying all these players have been at Spurs for 2 years or more, and they are also under 21.
Okay.
It's complicated. So UEFA is more complicated because of the 2-year thing. So it restricts potentially our squad. Now, of course, we don't have to name all of these players in our squads. We can sell some of these players, or we can simply just not name them in either the Premier League or the UEFA squads. That is a possibility. I think that would be a dreadful waste. And if we end up doing that, it would be as a result of poor planning and not ideal. You'll also notice I've got a column which I've titled Sold or Loaned with the caption Ship 'em Out. I've made a lot of assumptions here, and I imagine that not all of these players will be sold or loaned. I think we'll be stuck with some of these. And do we then name those in the Premier League and UEFA squads? Maybe we will, maybe we won't be able to. Depends how many players we want to sign. That is the gist of it.
You recently moved Jed Spence off this list, and successfully removed Højbjerg from it too, in the good way.
Højbjerg gone, cold.
Yeah.
I've also, for the purposes of this, I've also included Fraser Forster and Ben Davis.
Yeah.
I think. So I had them on the sold or loaned, ship them out list because I wanted us to sell or loan Davis and Forster. I think at this point it's much more likely that Davis and Forster both stay.
Cool.
So there's one final point, and it's such a minor point, but it's worth saying that in the UEFA squad, you have to include 2 goalkeepers on List A and at least 3 in total. So List A and List B combined. So you need goalkeepers.
But that can include List B players.
Exactly. So you could include Luca Gunter, our young goalkeeper who played.
I will, because he's got a hell of a throw on him.
Good player. Good player is Luca. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. I've got... So here's my spreadsheet, right? I've got one place to work with.
I mean, unless we want to sell some players, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I have this sheet. I also have this one, which is a brief mock-up of our current squads, sort of from a more tactical lens, where I'm like, here are the roles that we need fulfilled, and here are the players that are currently doing that, and then there's the sort of subcategories of the first 11, more sort of squad players, youth players, although having Bergvall in youth players is maybe a misdirection given UEFA's rules, and then there is now only one player left in the completely surplus player, and that's Reguilon. So I guess good work from Spurs. And there's also a colour code. So for me, Whiteman, Royale, Skip, Lo Celso, Hill and Solomon are all in red. They should go. And I've also got Davies, Spence, and perhaps controversially Kulusevski in the... Ooh, maybe they could go. And a bunch of kids are in green because I think they need loaning out for development reasons, amongst other reasons too. Boy. I'm still reeling. So, do you reckon, Windy, that somewhere in the region of 100 million euros, that is, plus whatever we bring in from sales, is a reasonable kind of budget for what Spurs are likely to work with this?
Yes, I do. I think we can afford to spend 100 million or more than 100 million.
Right, we can afford to. Are we likely to? Is that kind of where you'd expect that kind of level of expenditure?
At the start of the window, I definitely would have expected that. Yeah, and so therefore, I still should expect that, I think.
Okay, because I mean, we're not going to say what we think Spurs will do. We're going to argue what we think Spurs could feasibly achieve, right? Down here, I have a list of those players in red and orange. Oh, Højbjerg. Bye, mate. Although I should maybe include his sale value, which is, about the 18, right?
You might want to include Parrott's sale value as well.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. I'll take all of the spare change I can get. What was it?
It was under 10, wasn't it, in the end?
Let's say 8.
Okay.
So Hill, it looks like we've agreed a deal for him, we're lining up a deal for him with an optional 6 to come in. I'm gonna take that 6 up front for the budget. So if we and what I've done here for the others who don't have a named price, although I've got Spence, I think I'm going to remove him from that sale list, or at least we can talk about him. Let's move him separate for now.
Yeah.
Is I've taken the transfermarkt.co.uk or .com price for them listed. We can't get a definitive price for these players. For example, Brian Hill is going to be listed here at more than 6 million euros, right? He's listed at 14. We're not going to get definitive, but by using this third-party source, what I've gone and done is I've said maybe we can get approximately the listed market value for these players on the way out. And when we're talking about players on the way in, we're talking about 1.5 times their transfer market value. And again, you've got a few exceptions where we know that a bid has been publicly accepted for Jean-Claude Todibo at 35 million, even though his transfer market value times 1.5 is actually 53 million. And there's a few other cases like that. There was Guirassi's release cost was 16 million, despite his market value being much higher than that, just as an example. And we can't even begin to get into wages because how would we even do that? Right? So, if we, and this is fantastical, of course, but if we manage to sell, okay, Whiteman we're releasing, essentially, we're accepting a non-meaningful sum to remove a keeper. Reguilon, Royale, Skip, in my opinion, yes. Lo Celso, Hill, Solomon, we've got the money for Parrott, we've got the money for Højbjerg. Let's move him up for that reason. If we sold all of those players, I changed the font color so that you couldn't see it. We're bringing in an additional over 100 million. Let's call it 100 million. So, again, can Spurs make all these sales? Not necessarily, but we should be aiming to. And if we can, maybe there's 100 million in absolute total to be made from all of these together. Some of which have already been made. A couple of which have already been made. Parrot, Højbjerg. I'm going to exclude Spence, but it's still around that kind of fee, which gives us a budget up and around 200 million to work with. Certainly, the only very complicated rules that we never have to talk about on this podcast ever are Premier League spending regulations, because we could spend 400 million and we're not even slightly within a concern of PSR. So that's nice. Yeah, I believe that we could potentially spend that kind of money. But we'll go under today. We'll go some way under that. And then there's let's also move on Davies. Let's also move on Kulusevski a little more money, potentially. So I think that I have put the profiles that I believe that we need in a sort of vague order of their priority. I think our biggest, most pressing need is a 1v1 specialist winger. You may have heard me talk about this before on the podcast a couple of times. But I actually think I'm going to start, and the first move I'm going to make is I'm going to start with Kyle Walker-Peters. Because I've moved Skip out, and we're going to replace a club-trained player with a club-trained player. And then we're going to say, okay, there's that dealt with. So I'm going to make a copy of my squad depth chart. We can remove Skip from here. And I'm going to add in Kyle Walker-Peters. Where? This is going to be... obviously, Royale, we'll put him down here for now.
This is where I do think things have changed a bit, even in just 2 preseason games, because Kyle Walker-Peters seemed like such an obvious nailed-on signing, and having seen Spence play so well, and also knowing that Archie Gray can play fullback, makes me think, gosh, is Walker-Peters the nailed-on signing I thought he was a few weeks ago?
I still think he is, because I still think we have to move on Oliver Skip, because he didn't feature last season. So he's not fulfilling a purpose in the squad. And I still think if you lose a club-trained player, you've got to replace a club-trained player. I don't think Edwards is the player for us. I don't think Tom Carroll is the player for us. And Kyle Walker-Peters can play left-back. Jed Spence is still an uncertain feature, right? So for me, bring in Kyle Walker-Peters. He can play left and right. We're giving Jed Spence another 6 months, and then we can reassess in January. If in January, Jed Spence is even competing to take minutes off Porro, then Kyle Walker-Peters is our left back. But if in January Jed Spence is turning up late for training all the time, not demonstrating defensive awareness in his game, then Kyle Walker-Peters is our right back, and we go back into the market for a left back. Does that make sense?
Or it does make sense. No, it does make sense. I like Walker-Peters at left back. But I had convinced myself that the left back would also be the left-sided centre back.
So, on my list, I have some players who can play dedicated left back, dedicated left centre back, and some players on there who are bothers. Is it just those two? Oh, Calafiori, he's basically gone to Arsenal. I'm going to cross him off. Which does leave just 2 options, and one of them I'm not sure about his physicality. So it's really just one player. Hato at Ajax, but he seems like he wants to stay at Ajax for a while longer because he's only just not a child. So yeah, I think Kyle Walker-Peters is my first move.
All right. Yeah. You've convinced me. I mean, I think the only reason Walker Peters wouldn't be the first move is if you're convinced that Spence is the guy and that Gray can cover fullback minutes on the other side.
So here's my calculator. We're going to start with 200, right? Oh, and then we're going to take away Kyle Walker Peters value times 1.5, 30. That's 30 million euros down the drain right there. Spent. So now I think that our highest priority is a dribbly boy. No, Nico Williams looks like he's going to Barca. I'm crossing him off. Desiree Doué. If I put this guy on my list, Bayern will announce him before the video has finished rendering, so I'm crossing him off my list. We are working our way down our list. I also feel like I've listed a handful of right-footers, left-sided players, whereas I think the way that our squad is built, and this is visible, is that like we don't really have... I've moved in Kulusevski. Why have I got him on the left? Ignore that. Oh, okay, he can play right, left, centre forward, I've said. Yeah, maybe. That, based on the end of last season, and it's not been the case in pre-season, to be fair, but on the end of last season, Ange was certain that he wanted to play Son on the left and not centre forward, even when Richarlison was out injured. And so it looks to me, and maybe things will change in pre-season, it looks to me like the intention is Son and Werner are going to share that left-sided spot. And the left-sided spot, they're not a winger, they're not a 1v1 dribbler, they're not a carrier, they're the wide forward player. Mm-hmm. Whereas the space on the right, which arguably is Kulusevski's right now, and Johnson takes some of it, that is where we can look for a playmaker or a 1v1 carrier dribbler. So maybe I should be looking at a left-footed player. And here is where I think the club's thinking might be. Here is where we have been repeatedly linked to Desiree Doué. Okay, he's off the list. And we've been repeatedly linked to Eberechi Eze. I think if you bring in an Eze/Doué /Cherki/Chiesa, kind of a row type player, you can get that coverage where they can be the backup to Maddison, or they can be a tactical change to provide a dribbler on the left in a pinch. So I'm going to hit Eberechi Eze's release clause at 72 million, apparently. Or that roughly, something like that. We'll call it 70. And I'm going to bring in a left footer. At this stage, Bakayoko is too expensive. You spend 60 million for a player who's only ever done it in the Eredivisie. I think I have to keep scrolling past him. So we're talking about Eden Jagrova, who I find immensely frustrating because he has all the ability in the world, but he gets his head down and he doesn't pass the ball. And once he's dribbled past a player, he'll glance up and go, oh, there's still some more players to dribble past. I should do that instead of passing the goddamn ball to the player who's right out there in the open. But anyway, that guy's great. So I'm kind of looking at Brajan Gruda, who I only added to the list a couple of days ago and also has apparently been linked to Brighton. But I think I'm looking at Jagrova or Gruda. Let's start by adding Eze to all of the relevant places. So I'm going to add Eze. It's hard to make it clear that he can cover left and right. Let's just put him here for now. And I'm also going to remove Lo Celso, Hill, Solomon, Whiteman, Reguilon, Royale. And because... Okay, no, we'll get to that in a minute. Let's move Eze up. And put him in white. And meanwhile, over here, how are we looking? So we've got another homegrown player. But they're not club trained. They're association trained when it comes to UEFA.
Yeah, so on it. I took one off the column. Is it H? Yeah. Because we've beefed up the association trained players.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So to fit in any more players,
we've got to sell.
onto this day, we either have to sign another club-trained player, or we have to not include someone on the list, which could be Richarlison, could be Bentancur, could be Kulusevski, but we'd have to not include someone.
Goodness me.
Could be Davis, could be Forster, to be fair.
Yeah.
Like, just don't include Forster in the UEFA.
Yeah, and I think that is maybe probably worth doing, but he only creates a list A association trained space.
Yeah.
But by doing so, he opens up a non-homegrown because we've added Eze and we're over 4 on that chart. This is all so simple and obvious when you. Okay.
And the thing is about this chart, right, is I imagine Spurs have their own version of this.
Yeah.
And they've also got it projected across the next 3 or 4 years.
Maybe they will. Okay, so we're role playing, right? You're Johan Langer, and I'm Rob McKenzie and Frederick Leff in this scenario. Okay. So because I'm bringing in Eze, and Eze is going to provide depth both at Madison's 8/10 role, and he can be a tactical differential on the left. I'm going to bring in. Should I bring in Jagrova or Gruder? I don't know. I prefer Gruder's decision making. Jagrova's the better dribbler. If I put Gruder down, then Brighton will sign him, won't they?
Age profile works on Gruder's side as well.
All right, let's go for Gruder. It's fantasy anyway. I'm going to add Gruder, and in doing so, I'm going to look to sell Dejan Kulusevski. And I know that is controversial, but I feel like we are now nearly half an hour into this video, and I feel like we've laid out the reasons why we've got to start selling good players to change the profile of the squad. I think that's got to be done. If we're going to bring in 2 of these playmaker/forwards, we've got to move one on. There was a tweet by Mac who said, like, essentially what I just nicked it, where he says maybe we need to sell good players to make space for great players at this stage, which is why maybe extending Timo Werner's loan was questionable, right? I feel like Timo Werner's loan forces our hand in terms of Kulusevski, and I'm looking to move him on. So I need to take 70 million off the budget for Eze, which puts me down at 100. I can just type 100, and I'm going to take away the 30 for Gruder, but I'm going to add the 55. We're not going to get 55 for Kulusevski, are we? Is that
I would
too
say
fantastical?
that is optimistic.
Should I say 40?
Unless he goes to Saudi, in which case it's fine.
True. How much? Okay, you're in charge here. Then, how much do I award myself for selling Kulusevski?
Let's go 45.
Okay. We're still healthy with that. So that is our highest priority taken care of. I feel like right back and left back are okay, which means that while I've got the likes of David Hanko, David or David? He's a Balkan. A Balkan's called David or David?
I think David.
Okay. David Hanko.
I think it's Hanchko.
Oh my goodness. Well, that guy at Feyenoord, he can play both. And then there's Mika Marmol, who can play both. But I'm thinking, especially with Greaves and Calafiori and Ito, off the market, I think I want just a dedicated third choice centre back to move Dragusin further down the list. I'm less worried about a dedicated left back now. We can come back to that later. Now I think we can come back to that in January. So because of that, they don't need to be left-footed, and because they don't need to be left-footed, I'm bringing in Jean-Claire Todibo, who's the obvious best centre back, not an elite club right now. they are accepting bids, not even bids, they're accepting loans with an option or loans with an obligation for 35 million. This guy is way, way, way too good to be priced at 35 million. Dragusin's agent is going to have so much to say about this for months. I don't care. He doesn't bother me. I'm bringing in Jean-Claude Todibo. And now to do some extremely fun on-stream managing spreadsheet skills. Oh yeah, and Gray can cover right back too. I'm loaning out Valise for whatever that matters, in case that wasn't clear.
Give yourself an extra $1 million for a loan fee.
They can have him. So because I now have cover at left centre back, and because I now have cover-ish at left back, I suppose Spence is also a both-sider, isn't he?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that suits him quite nicely, to be honest.
Yeah, because he can move the ball inside. I'm going to sell Ben Davies. That's going to give me 5 million more to work with. But what does that look like now in terms of space? I've lost him here. And everyone has to move up, and that's a hassle for you on the spreadsheet, sorry. And we're losing him here.
I had removed Forster, but yeah.
Well, let's see. That's going to be. I think that might be the last decision we make, basically, because ideally you want your second choice keeper registered. But if our hands are forced, our hands are forced. What's kind of crazy here is like you've got so much wiggle room in the league. In the league, we can bring in like 4 non-homegrown players, but like, do you want to bring in a player that you're only going to register in the league that you can't play in UEFA? The problem is because it's the second choice competition. If it was the other way round, and you were like, okay, we'll bring in this kid, and they'll get minutes, they'll get rotation minutes, but they aren't going to. But you wouldn't do that anyway, would you? Because what if there's an injury and you need them? UEFA's rules are pretty harsh. I feel like.
I've also, I think there is a mistake in my spreadsheet here as well.
Okay.
Which I've just cottoned on to. So the count. Oh no, it's fine. It's fine. Ignore me.
Okay.
Yeah, UEFA's rules are harsh. It's the 2-year thing. It's the 2-year thing. So in a couple of years, we'll be all good because, you know, all of our new young signings will just be.
They'll count as club trained.
Yeah.
But that means that they can't be loaned out in the time being, or is that uncertain now? Is there maybe a change around that?
There's a whole thing around EU countries and stuff. Vuskovic will be, I understand Vuskovic will be club trained.
Okay, and Bergvall.
I think Bergvall will also be club trained, and there was one more, wasn't there? Maybe not.
Okay.
Oh, Archie Gray.
Archie Gray will become club trained. Which, that's one where it's like, maybe that's not harsh enough, because very clearly Leeds developed him into the player that he is. If he's ready to play Premier League minutes, it's because Leeds made him. Whereas we're just paying a lot of money for him. I should probably take the fee for Gray out of my budget, because we already spent the 40 million on him. Okay. Whereas Bergvall was done in January. So I think that counts as last season's budget. That puts me down to 80, but that's comfortable, right? We're barely making a dent in non-sale money at this stage. Okay, so now let's go back to the squad depth chart. We're moving Davies on. And I'm starting to say, okay, where are the gaps? Where are the weaknesses? Oh, I need to add Gruder into here. Druger? Who's that? And I'll move Werner to the bench. Now, of course, there's a bit of an elephant in the room, which is that Spurs loudly and proudly are looking to sell Richarlison and spend lots of money bringing in a player who's maybe not much better than Richarlison.
But who is perhaps more available.
But who is maybe less injured all the time. Yeah. Yeah. I've also got Bentancur first choice and Sarr second. I think that's quite debatable at this stage.
Yeah, same.
But I've got to put one in one place, right? So whatever. I do have a list of centre forwards. My top two choices: Sesko signs a new contract. Guirassy already moved to Dortmund. His 16 million release clause was hit, but because his release clause was so low, he asked for enormous wages, so it's not quite like getting him on the sheep. And given that he's 28, putting a 28-year-old on a big, long, heavy paying contract is tough, but you weigh it up against the release clause. So you got Gyökeres, Jonathan David, Santiago Jimenez. 3 good players. They all cost way too much. And I feel, oh god, I feel like, you know, I've got Eze now who can play left wing. I feel like Son can do a perfectly good job at centre forward. Richarlison is injured a lot, but between the two of them, you should have decent enough coverage, and then that just means that Eze plays left wing. Now, I guess if Richarlison is injured and Maddison is injured, maybe that's when Alfie Devine plays. Maybe that's not the end of the world.
Or Bergvall.
Or Bergvall, yeah, sure. Yeah, ignore that. Where are the weaknesses now?
I think...
Yeah.
Do you know, I actually genuinely think the biggest weakness in that squad is the backup goalkeeper.
Yeah.
If anything were to happen to Vicario, we would be fucked.
Yeah, I think that's true. Forster can't save a penalty. All penalties are a goal guaranteed because Forster can't dive, which is for me one of the higher important things for a goalkeeper to be able to do. Haven't loved Austin. He's made a couple of decent saves, but haven't loved him with the ball at his feet. Haven't loved Forster with the ball at his feet in pre-season. Whiteman has an excellent taste in music, but unfortunately that doesn't play the ball out from the back or prevent shots going in on net. Feeling a bit more optimistic about Gunter longer term, perhaps, if he has like a good development path, perhaps. But yeah, right now, I agree. Goalkeeper's an issue. Goalkeeper is an issue.
I think other Spurs fans
Yeah.
would be looking at this saying number 6 is still your big problem.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a complicated one, and I'm very open to this. It's a bit of a complicated one because you've got Bentancur, who's played number 6 for us and seems to be maybe in consideration to do it more going forward, according to Ange. I'm less convinced of that. I felt like there was a period last January where we were saying that, and so we didn't go in for Adam Wharton when we could have gone in for Adam Wharton, and then we stopped using him there, but then we're not really being linked to number 6s. Now, in the club's defence, there's not great options for backup number 6s right now. I mean, I've got this guy top, but I don't want him to be top, but then I don't know who else I do want to be top. You've got players who are like physically capable and good ball winners, like Rovella, Gonadouar, Mandela Keita, Ezekiel Fernandez, but they aren't anywhere, or they're a level below Bissouma in terms of their ability to receive under pressure, turn with the ball, and play forward passes. Okay, people are going to say Bissouma's passing is bad, and it's certainly not expansive, it's certainly not rangy, but because he gets that initial wriggle away from his marker a lot of the time, he can play a simple forward pass or a simple sideways pass, whereas if you're forced backwards, you're forced backwards. And then we've got the likes of Andre of Fluminense, Yacine Adli, who's apparently available because his contract is running down, Stiller at Stuttgart, who are good passers, but the defensive game that is asked of our number 6 is like, hey, all of the midfielders and attackers are like committing into the box, and so if we receive a counter-attack, you're responsible for like this 40-yard by 40-yard box of enormous amount of space to defend on the transition. And can this 22-year-old at Fluminense, who's kind of small, do that? can Yassin Adli, who has never really shone as a number 6 in his career and is really more of a number 8, do that for us? Can Angelo Stiller, who's a bit on the small side, lovely on the turn, wonderful left foot, do that? I don't know if I love any of these guys coming in. Which is why you might say, okay, maybe we bring in Mandela Keita and we don't register him in Europe. And you go between Bentancur playing some number 6, between Archie Gray playing some number 6, between the fact that Basuma doesn't pick up a lot of injuries, then you've got Mandela Keita. Is that a smart thing to do? Bring the guy in just to play in the league only, when you've also got Archie Gray?
No, it's not.
I don't know. There aren't home. Adam Wharton would have done a lot because he's a homegrown number 6 and obviously Premier League, more than Premier League good enough. I don't know how you address our number 6 issue right now. Maybe the reason the club aren't linked to any is because none make sense with our other moves and other priorities. Maybe Archie Gray is our number 6 next season, our second choice number 6 next season, and we just have to hope that that's good enough. He's got to play somewhere, right? He's got to be playing games. He can't just be sitting in the bench and training.
Yeah,
and if we address right back with Spence and Walker-Peters, and we think that we've got 3 left-footed players who can probably play on the left, I guess that's where he's playing, because he's not going to take number 8 between Bentancur and Sarr. He's probably not going to get any minutes at number 8. You and I both feel that he profiles more as a number 8. He profiles more as an up and down, box-to-box player. But I think that his press resistance means that the minutes are going to be for him at number 6, and that's that.
Or you've got Devine, who played a bit of 6, or you've got Hall, who plays 6, but is going to get physically dominated initially.
I think so. I like both those players, but I don't think either are going to provide solutions for us this season.
For this season, Hall probably going forward, perhaps even as soon as next season.
Yeah, I think so. And I'd like to see him get some UEFA minutes, in which case, why would we bring in a number 6? I think we have to go ahead with what we have in terms of number 6 and look for Gray, because I think I should maybe unmerge these cells and keep Bentancur as a number 8, but see. So, I mean, I have made this spreadsheet of a list of I don't know how many players. There's under 10 per section, so there's like, I don't know, coming in on 100 players on this list, and I don't know any goalkeepers. I don't know who the good young homegrown goalkeepers are or where to look for him. There's a kid at Brighton, obviously have loaned out, called Beadle, who I signed in Football Manager because that's not real. I don't know if he's actually any good in real life. I've got no idea. And it doesn't seem to be something the club are about to do anyway, right? So, what the club are interested in doing, and you'll see I've graded this out, is this sort of number 8 type up and down player who scores goals. And I don't understand why we want that when we've got Bentancur, when we've got Sarr, and when we've now got Gray. I understand that none of those 3 are really providing goals in their role as it is. I mean, Bentancur did score some goals last season, right? So to bring in, Jacob Ramsey, Conor Gallagher, Charlie Alcaraz, good players, good talents, midfielders who can midfield and also get in the box to score goals, but there just isn't a space for them in the squads, and I don't get it. So I'm going to keep those players greyed out, I think, because I don't think the club should be pursuing Jacob Ramsey, although it gets Lo Celso off the books, and he's a good player.
The other thing to say is you have signed Eze.
Sure.
And there is a possibility that
the club
we occasionally play Eze and Madison in the same midfield.
Yeah, the full sicko mode.
The chasing a game mode.
So, we've got our dribbler, We've got our left-sided centre-back, even though he's right-footed. Ange's going to have to deal with the fact that he's right-footed because he's outstanding on the ball, so it doesn't matter. And so's Romero, right? We're passing up a number 6 because we think that between Bentancur and Gray, that's got to be sufficient coverage, and there just isn't space to bring in arguably third choice type number 6 type guy. We've got our backup number 6 in the form of Eze, who can also cover the left wing. We're leaving left back for January, right? If we need a specialist left back, we've got specialist left backs here. I like all of these guys a lot. There's not many more, I don't think, outside this list. I like all of these guys a lot. Apparently, Dorgu's been playing some left centre back in pre-season, but like so has Oliver Skip. So let's not read too much into that right now. Yeah, some good players here. Revisit them in January, depending on how Spence gets on, how Kyle Walker-Peters gets on. Archie Gray was on this list. I crossed him out. We got our right back in Kyle Walker-Peters. I'd love to have brought in Gertruda because he can play left back, right back, centre back, defensive midfield. He will remove all of the build up in your washing machine. He will file your taxes. He will change your love life. But he's not homegrown, so we've got Gertruda at home, and his name is Kyle Walker-Peters.
You know, you can have Gertruda. You just have to remove someone else.
Right. And can that be Fraser Forster?
As it stands right now, it can be Fraser Forster.
Okay. Well, I'm considering it. But then we brought in another right footer who can also play on the left when instead of bringing a left footer.
But he does bring more versatility than Walker-Peters.
Yeah.
And a better age profile.
Yeah. That's true.
And in a couple of years, the homegrown issues aren't going to be a problem anymore.
Well, let's leave that. Let's say we've done this business. And in fact, no, because I'm going to ruin that now. Spurs want a centre forward, so I guess they're getting a centre forward. Do you think we're sending Richarlison along with this?
Do you know? I do actually. At this point,
Okay.
I think there are too many noises for there not to be something in it, and I feel very sad about it because I really like Richarlison, but
He's great.
The unavailability has obviously got to the club, and they're spooked by it. I noticed that you have neither Tony nor Solanke on your.
Solanke's alright. Solanke's a good. Solanke could just about make this list. I think we know he can do it in the league. He's just sort of. I mean, I guess that's the same as Gyökeres and Jimenez. He does a bit of everything to a good level. What's Solanke priced at? He's a Premier League player, right? So to get a player out of Bournemouth isn't easy.
Yeah.
Transfer market have him at 40. Time and a half would be 60 million. That's kind of what we're talking about with the likes of Gyökeres, Jimenez. Less so Jonathan David. I think Jonathan David might be available a little cheaper than that, but I guess we'd see. I like Jonathan David, but I think that it would be beneficial, especially if we lose Richarlison, especially if we lose Richarlison, and especially if we do loan out Valise and we don't keep Lancashire around to play and we loan him out too, that we should be looking for a guy who can jump, a physical presence in the box.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to go with Gyökeres over Jimenez, just because he's a bit more physical. I worry about his ability in settled possession against the low block, despite his height. But I guess that's my guy. I'm now reconsidering Solanke. Let's just call him new centre forwards. Let's just go with that. So we're removing Richarlison. We're bringing in new centre forwards. Now we've got 80 million, but Richarlison will bring in 60. So let's say we're going to spend that 80, but we're going to regain 60. So we lose 20 in a sense, bringing us down to 60 million euros left. that would give us the space to bring in either a left back or Gertrude, who can do a bit of everything. Gertrude would solve that difficult issue with the number 6, where it's like, do you want to bring in a dedicated player when you can maybe do that with Bentancur? Do you bring in the dedicated player when you can maybe do that with Gray? Is Gray good enough for Premier League level right now, today, tomorrow?
You don't have to worry about that if you've got Gertrude.
Because we know he can do that. Meanwhile, you've got other uses for him in the meantime. And he's not going to be anchored to being the rotational right back because you've got Spence and Walker-Peters in. But with Spence and Walker-Peters in, why are you bringing in another right footer? Oh, I don't know what to do.
And you've got Gray, who can play right back too.
Yeah. That's 4 right-footed guys who you think can do a good job at left back. There's no one to go like, today we need a left footer on the left because of this tactical situation. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's not like, although all of them can play left side, I think so, they still do so as quite right-footed players, which suits the inverted role. But again, if you're like, they keep showing our right-footed left back, Udogie's out injured, Udogie's suspended, Udogie needs rest. They keep showing our right-footed left back in a way that's causing us problems. We need a left footer there. We won't have that option in the squads. So do I go for Gertrude, or do I go for a dedicated left back, or do we wait and see in January based on how things go?
Well, I was just about to say, so I like a lot of your left back options from what I've seen of them. I do like Dorgu.
In January, Ferdi Kadioglu will be sick to death of Mourinho, so he'll be forcing his way out.
What I was going to say is, in January, Rayan Aït-Nouri will probably be worth double what he's currently worth now, because he is in a massive upward trajectory.
Yeah.
He's a very, very good player.
Yeah.
Who can also probably cover left wing at a push.
But then I've got Eze, so I don't need Aït-Nouri to do that.
True.
I reckon we sit on what we've got here and we save some budget for January and we work out what we're doing with Spence, what we're doing with Walker-Peters, what we're doing with Gray, and then go and buy Gertrude after all anyway, because he can do anything. And is that all
you're
fine?
Yeah, you're fine.
All right, sweet. It's easy, Spurs. It's easy. Come on.
Why were we panicking?
Come on. Just sell all those guys that I said you can just easily sell. Like that's like just deciding that you're going to sell them at the beginning.
All right. No. Okay, you're fine at the moment.
Yeah, but
if any of those sold or loan players aren't sold or loans,
I'm not registering them.
You're just leaving them out
I'm
the squad.
telling them today.
Yeah,
you are no matter what
rejected.
happens. If I've got 4 fit senior players, you're not getting registered. Go find a club.
You can register Whiteman because he's a club trained.
Yeah, whatever.
The others can.
He can stick around just to DJ in the dressing room.
Yeah, absolutely.